For the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. All right, open forum is the first item today. Mr. Olson, if you would like to step up and speak.
Sure. Mark Olson, 12336 Thompson Road. Thank you, Commissioners, for seriously considering to cut the Housing Trust Fund levy. County taxpayers shouldn't have been responsible for providing $1 million of zero interest over 20 years to Lots Novotny Apartments in Baxter. The project was already built, but the Housing Trust Fund had a huge fund balance, and the HRA wanted to lower the balance so they could fool you into thinking they needed more tax money. They then gave Lots Novotny project $1 million with the next to nothing interest and a 20-year payback. Furthermore, the taxpayers shouldn't have been responsible for providing over $300,000 for a privately funded project in West Brainerd. This entirely privately funded My Neighbor to Love project was already being built. People were living there, but the owner owed the contractor. So the county HRA board agreed to bail them out, again with taxpayer money. The HRA board has free rein to do as they please once this board approves the trust fund levy. And it's just not right. So once again, thank you for looking out for the people in the county who are struggling every day and don't need these taxes raised because of developers aren't able to manage their projects properly, or the HRA board simply wants to give away more of our money. Thanks again for taking a stand on out-of-control government. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder that open forum is for someone to speak on any subject that isn't on our current agenda. The issue that was just spoken about is on our agenda for later on. So, Mr. Kern, if you would like to come up, you're next up if you have something other than what's on our agenda.
I didn't see it on the agenda there. Well, I'll just say during COVID, there were a lot of programs that were implemented. We had the housing rent help for renters. And as a taxpayer, you know, we had renters that needed that help. They had home help for people for housing, and I just appreciate everything you guys do to keep our taxes down. So I'll just say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on a subject other than what's on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 3, which is to review and approve the minutes from September 9th, 2025. Motion by Commissioner Franzine.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Coring. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, same sign. That motion passes. Number 4 is to review and approve the agenda for today. Any additions?
Mr. Chair, no additions or changes.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Franzine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Coring. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, same sign. That motion passes. Number 5, consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Franzine makes a motion to approve,
Second.
second by Commissioner Coring. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, same sign. That motion passes. Move on to number 6. Mr. Pence.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I have one item for your consideration this morning, if I can find it. It is a request for the preliminary plat of Leffler Acres for parcel number 5304-0576, located in Section 4 of Center Township. The request is to approve a conventional design preliminary plat consisting of 3 lots. The total size of the parcel before subdividing is approximately 22 acres. If we can go to the map on page 46, and look at that, Amber's already there. This is the parcel in question. It's a little bit of a unique piece of property. This is the dividing line between Center and Mission. So this is in Center Township. We have Mission to the north. This is Upper Mission here, and then this would be Lower Mission here. There's that little channel that goes through. And it's what they're proposing is to create 3 lots. There's a lot here with a dwelling and over here as well. And then there's a lot over on this side. And there is this is an access coming through to get access for those parcels. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on August 21st of 2025 and made a unanimous recommendation to the board to approve the preliminary plat of Leffler Acres. The Planning Commission developed the finding of fact found on page 52 to 53 for the board consideration as well in your packet. It should be noted that the Planning Commission did approve a variance to allow the road right-of-way accessing the parcel at 33 feet where 66 feet is required, utilizing an existing 33-foot egress easement to the property to the north. Based on the application submitted, staff packet, public comments, and the finding of fact, it is recommended to approve the preliminary plat of Leffler Acres. Staff have reviewed the file and concur with the recommendation from the Planning Commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Pence?
Yes. Since they have decided that 33 feet is enough, this will never be taken over by the county, is that right?
This is in Center Township, so this is not is
Okay.
not in first assessment. It's not a township road. This would be under the jurisdiction of Center Township.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Coring?
So, Chris, if you look, there's all these little icons all over the place on there. I'm just curious what that is. Does that mean lowland?
Wetlands.
Wetlands.
Yeah, it's
That's what I thought.
a low piece of property, so that's why you see, instead of having potentially 6 or 7 lots, you see 3 lots, because the location where you could actually build on it is pretty limited to the wetlands that are on the property.
But, Mr. Chair, so there is a building envelope when they're creating these lots there, do we?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct, so
What if there isn't a building envelope? Will we say, you know what, you can't even build here, why would you create
correct,
that?
so when you look at, when we're developing these plats, there's a minimum lot area and a minimum lot width that they have to meet depending on their lake classification. And then there's also a amount of buildable area, which would be areas that are not wetlands, not setbacks, those areas where you could actually put a structure. And these 3 lots all meet all those requirements for lot area, lot width, and buildable area as well.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lee?
I thought I saw it on here somewhere, but I can't find it anymore. I just want to verify Center Township didn't weigh in on it, or they were okay with it?
Received no comments from Center Township.
Okay.
I think that's pretty frequent, that we don't get comments from townships.
We have a few townships in the county who are much more active in the planning and zoning world than others, so, for sure, yeah.
Mr. Chair, Chris, can you tell a little bit about when the townships are asked for a comment? Talk a little bit about what that process.
Absolutely. Yep, so the first step we have in the process for any public hearing, if it's a plat, variance, conditional, interim use permit, land use map amendment, is we have the development review team meeting. And that is where we do that twice a month. We actually just had a DRT meeting. The second one for September was yesterday. And it's a opportunity where we invite the township. If it's on the lake, we invite the DNR. If it's on a county road, we'll invite Highway Department. If it's on a state road, we'll invite MnDOT. And it's an opportunity for the applicant to get together with the different local government units that would have some potential influence and impact over what they're trying to do. And it's an opportunity to talk about the application and to get some feedback on from the different parties associated. The next step then is that they'd make an application, and then once that happens, we do provide notice to the townships. They're able to either provide us comments in writing, they can provide comments, they can actually come to the public hearing and testify that way. And so there's multiple ways for the townships to be involved in the planning and zoning process, and we encourage the townships to get involved, and so we can get their feedback and understand really what the local, because they're the closest to the people at the township level, and to try to understand if there's any questions or concerns that they might have with the different applications that we have come up.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I know sometimes you all hear from townships, once it hits your agenda, saying, oh, why would you approve this, or why would you go forward with this, or we don't like it. I just wanted Chris to explain a little bit that process does ask for their input a few times before it ever gets to your table. So when they are approaching you after it's already here, they've already been asked for their feedback and comment, and as he mentioned, more times than not, we don't see anything that comes from the townships.
I think from my chair, after the fact drives me crazy. So we see that in variances, and we see that in input.
Yeah.
And be proactive. Come and help us make a decision, make a good decision.
Absolutely.
So, Commissioner Coring?
And Mr. Chair, just to expand on that a little bit, because I have this happen often in my district, that the townships will be opposed to something, but yet it'll get approved. And I tell them that you've delegated your authority to the county as far as planning and zoning is concerned, and we're going by our ordinance. If we didn't go by our ordinance, there's a good chance we're going to be taken to court. So when somebody from a township, I always say, you can do your own planning and zoning. I see Doug Kern is here from Crow Wing Township. They do their own planning and zoning. So I encourage any of the townships that I represent, if you feel like we're not doing a good enough job or you don't like what we're doing, I encourage those townships to do their own planning and zoning. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? And I would look for a motion to approve the preliminary plat of Leffler Acres per findings of fact discussed on 8/21/2025.
I will move to accept the preliminary plat for Leffler Acres.
Commissioner Lee makes the motion to approve. Commissioner Franzine seconds that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, same sign. That motion passes. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris. County Sheriff, who's speaking on behalf of the sheriff today? Boy, nobody wants to talk. Okay, so there's nothing going on at the sheriff's department. Good to know. All right, thank you very much. County Attorney, welcome to the fray.
Thank you. Good morning. I don't have anything this morning unless anyone has any questions for me.
Questions? Nope.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. County Administrator.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, yesterday we had a senior management team meeting, and some of the topics that we discussed on our agenda included some updated workflow resources for our supervisors. You've heard me say before that we want to make sure we're giving our folks enough tools to do their jobs effectively, and our HR department has put together some workflow documents that allow them to have all of the necessary letters, action plans, things that they would need to have in a one-stop shop location and kind of follow a flow chart of how to address different situations. So they demonstrated that for us yesterday, and we went over some of those options and questions that came up there. We spent quite a bit of time talking about our building inventories for the purpose of insurance with MCIT. We have a really good handle on our capital assets. With our capital plan, our fleet plan, we have a really good handle on what we have for those types of assets that need to be insured. We have a really good plan on our technology and our equipment plan, some of those different things. But what we don't have is a good list of what's the replacement value within our buildings as far as furniture, conference rooms, items. For instance, what's in this room? If this room were to be decimated, what would it take to replace in this particular room? So we had a good conversation around going through that process of getting that original inventory and then keeping it updated. So that's a process that will be occurring here in the next few months as we work through that process. That actually came to us as a report from our continuous improvement team. It was an item that they had identified that had a little bit of a pain point, so we're working through what that would look like as well. And then we spent considerable time continuing our review and revision of our performance management software template. We talked before about the action we want to take to look at standardizing that template between departments to make sure all of our employees are seeing the same type of performance review at the end of the year. So we are hopeful to have that revision complete by the first of the year to put that in place. So we spent some time looking at that. And that's all I have for you today, unless anyone has any questions of me.
Questions for the administrator? Not seeing any, so thank you very much. Move on to number 10, which is the 2026 preliminary budget and levy adoption.
Mr. Chair, by statute, you have to adopt your preliminary levy for the 2026 tax year by the end of September, and Nancy is here today to go over the proposal of what we have for you to consider and a resolution for your consideration as well. So she's going to start by going through her presentation that kind of highlights the top-level touch points that you might have questions on.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and
Welcome.
Commissioners. See if I can run this perfect. Thank you, Amber. So I'm here this morning to review the 2026 preliminary levy with the County Board. Some highlights that we wanted to note here on slide 1 is the county has successfully implemented its first long-term operational budgets for 2026 to 2030. This has been about a 1.5-year process in the works. This is our first 5-year operational budget for the county. This provides us with a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach in the budgeting process from year to year. It also allows us to have improved planning for the future. The goal is to try to reduce those peaks and valleys that we sometimes see in the budget process, whether it's on the revenue side or the expense side, and how can we reduce those peaks and valleys, looking out more long-term into the future. On July 10th, we started with our 2026 levy starting point at $53.1 million, which was an 11.31% increase at that time. We went through 4 rounds of budget changes in the amount of $2.3 million, and so today I'm presenting a preliminary levy of just over $50.8 million, or 6.49% increase. The budget presented today does not include any recent federal legislative changes that we've recently heard about regarding the SNAP program and the Medicaid program in our Community Services Office, as we're waiting what those implications are going to be at the state level, and then any potential trickle-down effect to the county. As a part of the 5-year budget process, we also look at our fund balance analysis for the next 5 years as well to make sure that our cash levels are within our thresholds regarding our fund balance policy. Some of our funds don't receive revenue until June or July of each year, so we need to make sure that we are being mindful that we have those cash reserves to pay our bills until we receive those revenues in June or July. So we are meeting those thresholds, and those look very healthy through 2028. We will continue to monitor that moving forward as well. Our CIP Advisory Committee has expanded the capital improvement plan. They had a 5-year capital improvement plan prior to this budget process. They have expanded that plan to a 7-year capital improvement plan. The goal for them for next year will be to make that a 10-year capital improvement plan, so we're continuing to expand that plan as well. And then it takes a team, approximately 90 staff members dedicating thousands of hours of work to accomplish this budget process. And as we move along in the budget process, as we do every year, we're mindful of the county's guiding mission of serving well, delivering value, and driving results. So we're going to start off just looking at those levy funds. So the main levy funds for the county include the general fund, the highway fund, our community services fund, and then again, our capital projects fund. So this is the org chart for those respective funds, and then the different divisions below those funds that make up those funds as well. So now we're going to look at the revenues for those 4 levy funds. These are all compiled together. So I'm comparing the 25 budget to the 2026 preliminary budget and whether there was an increase and decrease in dollar value and percentage. So you will see the first one is the property tax levy. Again, we're presenting a $50,839,879 property tax levy for 2026. This is just over a $3 million increase or a 6.49% increase. The next revenue source that we have listed is intergovernmental revenue. We're showing or projecting that to increase by $3.5 million. And those main reasons for the increase have to do with highway state aid, police aid, city and township reimbursements for some of our cooperative highway-related projects, state grant revenue that we're receiving, and also some highway federal grant revenue that the highway department will be receiving for their projects as well. Other taxes is expected to increase about $244,000, and this mainly has to do with the local option sales tax revenue that our highway department receives. And charges for services is expected to decrease about $290,000, and this is mainly due to our jail revenue in relation to our out-of-county holds. And then you can see we have miscellaneous revenue projected to increase by about $79,000. This incorporates our rents, some refunds that we have, some sales of assets, and some property and casualty proceeds that we receive. Then we have our investments that are expected to increase about $168,000. And last but not least, our licenses and permits, which has a minimal increase of just over $1,800. That mainly has to do with our land services division as well as our fleet division and their maintenance service fees that they incur. Overall, revenues for 26 are expected to increase $6.8 million or 6.25% increase. This slide just gives a better visual representation of the different pieces of the pie and what revenue sources make up the larger portions of those pieces of pie. So you can see over to the right, the property tax levy is approximately 43% of our revenues. And our intergovernmental revenue sources make up just over 38%. So those two combined is 82% of our revenue for the county. And then the other categories are listed there as well. Property tax levy by fund, this is just again comparing the 2025 property tax levy with the 26. So you can see the general fund, we're projecting an 8.84% increase in that revenue. Highway fund will have a 0% increase. Community services, a 2.51% increase. And then capital projects will remain and have a 0% increase.
Mr. Chair, Nancy, can you go back to that slide before with the pie chart?
Yep.
So you see on the pie chart, we talked about the 44% being from the property tax levy and the intergovernmental of being the 38.8. Those are the two biggest drivers of revenue for the county. When you look at the chart that says, well, why is general government going up 8% in the levy and highway is a flat levy and community services is only 2.1? When we look at that pie, the orange part is almost all highway and community services. So that's where the majority of that funding piece comes from, is within our community services and highway departments. They're the ones that are getting the majority of those state and federal grants that are making up that intergovernmental piece. The property tax levy portion, general government is almost funded exclusively through that process. Other than the charge for service, the little yellow pie piece of the pie there, there's a little bit of that impacts in some of those areas, whether it be through the jail with some of their out-of-county holds or whatever it might be on that side. But the majority of general government is made up out of the property tax levy. That just shows a little bit of what that disparity in the bar graph was compared to what the pie chart shows.
So now we'll look at the expenditure side of those 4 levy funds as well. I do want to start off by noting that we have done some estimations of what our mandated services costs are here at the county. What are those services that we're required to provide, whether it be through the state or federal government? We are estimating that those mandated services equate to about 70% of the services we provide. Another 15% are non-mandated services, however, those impact our mandated services. And those would be services such as our facilities and maintenance services, our utility services, our IT services. They're not mandated, but we need those to operate. And then last but not least, 15% is what we're estimating to be our non-mandated services. So if you look at the total expenditures and you take those percentages into consideration, our mandated services equate to about $103 million of those expenditure costs that you see on the screen. The remaining $18 million would equate to our non-mandated services. So that just gives you some perspective of the requirements here at the county level when it comes to the expenditures and the services we provide. So we have broken down for the levy funds the expenditures by category. As you can see, personnel services is our larger expenditure here at the county. For 2026, it's $62.7 million. We're looking at about a $4.5 million increase, which is 7.73%, followed, and that includes our salaries and wages, our health insurance for active and retiree employees, our pension and FICA, and also the new Paid Family Medical Leave Act that we need to implement beginning in 2026. Services and charges is our next expenditure category. That's expected to increase by $10.2 million, and that mainly has to do with the highways contractor fees that they're projecting for 2026, and that relates to the projects that they have on their slate for 2026 in accordance with their highway improvement plan. Public aid assistance is expected to decrease by just under $600,000, and that mainly has to do with the foster home placements budget and the preventative measures that Community Services has implemented to reduce those costs. Then we have supplies and materials that has about a $191,000 decrease, capital outlay $1.6 million decrease, and other expenditures, which is about a $65,000 increase, and that has to do with the appropriations allocations that you all agreed to during one of our budget committee meetings. Overall, again, total expenditures $121.5 million, $12.3 million increase, or 11.31%.
So, Mr. Chair, the other expenditures, the appropriations increases Nancy was talking about, that included the increases you approved for the Kitchigami Library, for the airport, for the Historical Society. Which one what am I forgetting?
Airport, Historical Society, Kitchigami.
Those 3 that you approved increases for, and as well as the ones that were just static that received the same amount that they had received in the past.
Amber, this isn't working. Could you go to the next slide for me, please? So again, we have a pie chart here showing the expenditure categories as well. Again, personnel services is about 51% of our expenses, and the levy funds followed by services and charges at 29%, and then we go to public aid assistance, and then supplies and materials, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So our service centers, so this is taking it to the next level. So we started out at the high level, the levy funds, now we're going to the next level down, which is our service centers, to give a little bit more detail. So we have the 7 service centers here noted on the organizational chart: governance services, admin services, public safety services, and land services. Those all fall within our general fund. So governance services, we have then the different divisions below there, which are our commissioner's budget, veteran services budget, our administrator budget, and our appropriations and attorneys budgets. And then administrative services incorporates facilities, finance, elections, extension, IT, and human resources. Public safety are all of our divisions in our sheriff's office. And land services are customer service, environmental services, and assessment services. And then again, we have our highway services broken down by their different divisions. and community services as well. And then our capital improvement plan is below the capital projects in our capital projects fund. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at the revenues based on the service centers. So instead of looking at the fund level, we're going to look at the service center level. So governance services revenues is expected to increase by $539,000. Administrative services, about $287,000. Public safety services, about $1.5 million. And land services, $228,000. The majority in all of those categories has to do with the property tax increase that we're proposing today. That is what is helping to fill that difference between their revenues and expenses, fill that gap. Then we have highway services revenue projected to increase by $2.9 million. This has to do with the local option sales tax, state aid that they're projected to receive, intergovernmental reimbursements, and federal grants that they're expected to receive as well. Community services has just over a $1 million increase in revenue. This has to do with property taxes and some state grant revenue that they're anticipated to receive. And last but not least, our capital projects, $163,000 increase, and that has to do with allocation for our county program aid that we receive. Again, total revenues equate to the $115.8 million, $6.8 million increase, the 6.25%. Next slide, please. And then we also have a pie chart breaking that out based on the service centers. So the larger pieces of the pie are community services at 34%, followed by highway at 24%, and then we go to public safety at 18%. Administrative services is 7%. Let's see, governance services, and then followed by land services and capital projects. Next slide, please. Then a comparison of our property tax levy by our service centers. So just comparing again 25 to 26. In governance services, that's over an 8% increase. Administrative services, over a 4% increase. Sheriff services, just under a 12% increase. Land services, 5.75% increase. Highway at a 0% increase. Community services, 2.51% increase. And capital projects at a 0%. Next slide, please. Next, we'll look at our expenditures for our service centers. Governance services were expected to increase by $519,000. This relates to personnel services, the appropriations, legal fees, and medical fees. Administrative services is expected to increase by $287,000. This relates to personnel services, software services, and property and casualty insurance premiums. Public safety services is expected to increase $1.5 million. Again, relates to personnel services, membership dues, and software service fees, and property and casualty insurance premiums. Land services is expected to increase by $228,000, and that mainly relates to personnel services. Highway services is expected to increase just over $10 million, and that relates to personnel services and contractor fees. Community services is expected to increase $1.3 million. That mainly relates to personnel services. And last but not least, our capital projects is expected to decrease $1.6 million, and this just relates to how things are allocated in our upcoming capital improvement plan. Next slide, please. So now we have the pie chart just breaking down those expenditures for those service centers. The largest, this correlates to the revenue side of the service centers. So community services, 33%, followed by highway at 26%, public safety at 17%, administrative at 4%, governance at 5%, land services at 4%, and capital projects at 4% as well. Next slide, please. Capital projects, so as I had noted as one of our highlights, the county has had a capital improvement plan for many years. A part of that plan are the different projects that we earmark as a part of our 7-year capital improvement plan. We provided this slide just comparing our 25 to 26 budgets in relation to our capital projects. The county has a CIP plan to maintain and improve capital assets without adding these costs to the operational budget. It allows us to structurally balance this plan because this plan utilizes county program aid revenue to offset the expenses, as well as $1 million of property tax levy is also a part of the revenue base in our capital projects fund. We're also seeing revenue in there for our sales of assets. Solid waste in their respective fund has solid waste assessment revenue to pay for their capital projects, and then our landfill charges in the landfill fund fund their projects as well. For 2026, we have 84 projects in our capital projects plan. This goes anywhere from a facilities project, could be a roof replacement project of about $398,000. We have some IT, some software enhancements for a project of $250,000. And then just another example is in our fleet division or department, we have a road grader expected to be purchased at just over $500,000. That just gives you an idea of what the projects are that encapsulate the capital improvement plan. So these would be expenses that relate to public improvements, building projects, and asset purchases. So for 2025, our total CIP was at $7.9 million. For 2026, our estimated budget is $8.4 million.
Mr. Chair, and I think as we've moved into 2025, looking into 26, we're starting to see some of those supply chain issues that we were seeing for the last 5 years since COVID started. They're starting to right themselves a little bit. It was taking a long time to get a tandem truck or to get a squad car, and for a while we were having to delay. I think we are slated to receive the plow truck that we ordered in 22. In 2022's plow truck will be delivered this year. That starts to kind of put us in a behind segment a little bit, is where we've been playing catch up over the last few years because we've had the resources allocated for that purpose, but if we can't get the supply, the material, then it is pushing that down the road a little bit. And we are starting to see this kind of balance out a little compared to what we had seen in the past several years.
Next slide, please. Now we will turn gears here to the unorganized territory. So just as a bit of information, so we have the first assessment district and the second assessment district that are part of the unorganized territories. The county board is the elected governing body for the unorganized territory, as this territory does not have a local unit of government. It does not have a city council. It does not have a township board. The county board is its local unit of government. So on the revenue side, so the first assessment district, the property tax levy that we're proposing is $1,412,463. That's a $78,000 increase, or 5.85%. Intergovernmental revenue, we're projecting a $1,886 increase, 3.5%. This mainly relates to the state gas tax allocations that we receive that gets deposited into the first assessment district. For the second assessment district, we're proposing a property tax levy of $99,999. Boy, I could have rounded that up. Which is an $8,664 increase, or a 9.49%. And then intergovernmental revenue, we're expecting about a $231 increase there, and that also relates to this state gas tax allocation that we receive.
And Mr. Chair, just for clarification, when Nancy's saying there's a 5.85% increase in the first assessment and 9.49% increase in the second assessment, that is not a tax increase, contrary to what a recent headline might have read in the Brainerd Dispatch. That is the levy amount increase. For FAD, we're talking $78,000. It is a 5% levy increase over the $1.36 million levy that they had in 2025. That will not equate to a 5% increase in the taxes of the people who live in the FAD. I just want to make sure everyone is clear when we're talking levy percentages. Levy is the total dollar amount of the spending increase. It does not equate one for a tax increase. So while those percentages seem significantly high, particularly in the SAD district when we talk about 9.49%, and that one is much more impactful for those residents because the tax base is this big compared to in the FAD where the tax base is that big. So just a little clarification on the difference between a levy and what a tax increase will see. We won't know what that tax increase will be until we get closer to December when we actually have those values, tax capacities, and can calculate what that tax change would be.
Mr. Chair. Deb, in that case then, when we're looking at our levy increase of like 6.4 something, that doesn't equate to your taxes going up by 6.4
Correct.
something, correct?
That is correct.
So it's the same thing as you're stating out here?
Correct. The 6.49% levy increase is the percentage of spend. You heard the former administrator talk a lot about a pie and your piece of the pie and how big the pie is. Right now, what we're talking about with the levy is the pie. How big is the pie? We're not talking about the individual slices or what your part of the pie is or somebody else's part. That will be determined when we take the tax capacity and individual market values and all of those things get to be determined what's the portion of the pie each taxpayer is responsible for. But it's not a one-to-one equation to say if the levy is going up 6.49%, your tax is going to go up 6.49%. That is not true.
Mr. Chair. So you could actually have a levy increase where it doesn't impact the actual taxes to the taxpayer.
That is correct. You could
Because
have a
the
levy
pie,
increase.
as you stated, the pie got bigger.
Correct.
And so there's more to take it out of, and so your taxes may not even go up even with an increase in levy.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me.
Next slide, please. On the expenditure side for our unorganized territory in the first assessment district, we'll start with services and charges, $435,000 increase. For both the FAD and the SAD, the services and charges increase is mainly due to highway maintenance costs and construction contractor fees for the projects that they have earmarked in those respective districts. Other expenditures in the first assessment district is actually projected to be a decrease of just over $5,000. Other expenditures in both of those districts are due to interfund transfers that come out of the unorganized territory and go into the highway fund to capture the costs that the highway department has incurred for doing maintenance, for doing small construction projects, for any of their labor, for their personnel staff and the work that they do out there. There is an annual transfer that takes place out of the unorganized territory fund and goes into the highway fund every year.
And Mr. Chair, really in the unorganized territories, they have pretty much three expenses. They have road maintenance, road projects, whatever it might be. They have fire service contracts that are set by the districts that are providing that fire service for them. They have election services and a little bit of administrative services from the finance team for that work that they do. Other than that, there's not much that's associated with the expenses in those two divisions.
For one sec, it's not a pretty subject, but when we look at the first assessment district and the growth that we see out there, fastest growing area in our county, the concern becomes water and sewer over the course of time, and we know that there's a lot of lowland out there in that particular area of the county. And so as we look at the development out there, you think of 371, Highway 77, Wise Road, you look at the stress that's going to happen with septic systems and water quality out there. It has to be a concern of the board for the next 20 years of how we handle the development out there and what that's going to look like. So I just put that on the radar. It's not a fun subject to talk about when we talk 20 years out, but it's certainly coming and it's going to have to be addressed at some point. Nancy?
So then just to mention too, the second assessment district, again, services and charges, about an $8,500 increase, and then those other expenditures, just under a $1,500 increase. Next slide, please. Then we have the comparison of the property tax levy for the unorganized territory. So you can see again, the first assessment district, we're presenting a 5.85% levy increase, and the second assessment district, the 9.49% increase. Next slide, please. And then last but not least is a excerpt of the resolution that was in your packet that we're presenting to you today. Total tax levy for Crow Wing County of $50,839,879. Property tax levy for the unorganized territory first assessment district of $1,412,463. Second assessment district, property tax levy of $99,999. And then we also have included in that resolution the Crow Wing County HRA tax levy of the $412,626 for your consideration.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
this is
Lupke.
probably a question for Deb. I would like to discuss a little more on the HRA funding. Would it be best maybe to move that separate and vote on that separately? Can that be done, or do you want it done as the whole thing?
We have it listed in the resolution as a whole piece. We've traditionally in the past taken it as one total action. However, you have the authority to do whatever you would like, to consider it however you would like to do so. It is an option you can consider.
Okay, I would like to discuss it, and I think right now I have no problem with the tax levy resolution as it sits, except for the area of the HRA. And I would make a motion, in order to have discussion, I will make a motion that we go from a zero housing trust fund to a $200,000 housing trust fund added on to the HRA levy. I'll make that motion.
So Administrator, does that qualify as a amendment?
You haven't adopted anything on this resolution as of yet, so you can make whatever change you would like to in this regard at this point.
So we have a motion to move the HRA to a $200,000.
So it would basically change the dollar amount on the Crow Wing County HRA resolution on the tax levy from $412,626 to $612,626 is what the action would take in that regard.
And I'm making the motion in order to get a second, in order to have open discussion about it.
So question for you is, if we didn't move it to a separate one,
Right now, you're
We
not
still-
moving it to a separate one.
we could still have the motion in the second and discussion
Correct,
about the entire
correct,
proposal here, or,
correct.
so just for ease of dealing with this, I'm going to ask that you
I would-
withdraw.
I would withdraw that motion. I would love to move it to or like to move it to separate it. I don't know if I have the ability to do that.
So, Mr. Chair, if I'm hearing you right, you would like on the, can you put the resolution on page 55? So down at the bottom, you want after where it says total second assessment district, you want to take that next, be it further resolved, the Board of Commissioners, the following preliminary property tax levy for the Crow Wing County HRA to be set for '26. You want to remove that from this existing resolution,
Correct.
okay?
And my point is that not doing that, we get to the same place by getting a motion and a second on the entire resolution, and then we have discussion, and we can change whatever we want at that point with an amendment. And a vote, up, down, sideways, whatever direction it goes, and we accomplish the same thing.
Right. You don't have to remove it from the resolution, and his previous action did not remove it from the
Right,
resolution.
and that was my,
Yeah.
according to what I understand, that would be my intent, because I have no problem with everything else. I just want to have some open discussion again on the Housing Trust Fund.
Correct.
Okay, so
I made the motion.
You made the motion. Is there a second? Is there a
Can
second?
you repeat the motion again? It was to separate this off.
No.
No,
The,
no.
the motion is to change be it further resolved for the HRA levy to change the Crow Wing County HRA levy from 412,626 to
No,
612,626.
I think he's separating it off.
No.
No, he
No,
wasn't.
no, not
Wasn't.
according to Deb. That's why I wanted to have Deb clear it up for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's not separating it out. It's leaving it in the same motion. It's changing that dollar amount.
Okay.
That's the motion before you at this time.
And I'll second that motion for discussion.
Thank you. Oh, you have to say motion in a second.
So,
Open for discussion? Okay. One of the things I wanted to talk about is the fact that when we did our consensus on our county of the whole, it was brought out that we would take it from $400,000 down to zero. I did receive some phone calls in regards to that, and one of the calls I got was from somebody who actually sits on the board, my appointee who sits on the HRA board, and that's Tyler Gardner. Tyler Gardner is also the mayor of the city of Pequot, and he's also a business owner up in the area. He understood the fact that in our budget time that we needed to maybe look at moving it down a little bit. He did not agree with the fact that we would take it to zero. And some of the reasons is because the HRA, well, one thing is, Crow Wing County has been a leader in this area. This board had put in a housing trust fund back years ago, and at that time, there was only 7 other counties in Minnesota that has a housing trust fund. Since then, and that was in 2023, as of today, there are 23 counties that do a housing trust fund. Because we were the leader, and we did do that, there are other counties that came in to do that. Counties normally, as a whole, don't usually get involved in housing, but in today's economy, in today's world, and with the challenges that a lot of our counties, especially our regional counties, face in workforce housing, the counties have had to kind of step up to the plate because the cities can't afford to do it all. So the counties have also stepped up the plate. In Minnesota, there's actually 53 housing trust funds out there, 23 of them being counties and the other 30 of them being actually the cities. By staying in the housing trust fund, it gives us to be a placeholder there. However the state does their funding, the state does look upon when we ask for extra money for our housing trust fund, they actually look to see what counties do the housing trust fund. And those counties stand above the rest of the counties looking for trust dollars. Remember, housing development is economic development. And in the case of what we have done and what the numbers I've been able to get, Eric is actually on vacation, so I've had other staff people help me out with numbers. Some of those have, I think most of them have come to all of us. The monies that have been invested in the Housing Trust Fund have brought in a little over $100,000 in increased taxes to Crow Wing County. That one property that has been brought up numerous times brings in about $73,000 in taxes. That's just in taxes. It also provides places for workforce housing for people who are coming into this community to work here, that we've hired in this community, that cannot find a place to live. This is not money for low rent housing. This is not money for that. This is money for subsidized, not subsidized, stabilized housing, as in the case of lots on Novotny, that allow those properties, because we're involved in it, we can keep a rental at a set rate that's lower than market. That is how I look at it. AMC actually did a little bit of a seminar. The 3 of us actually attended it. I think Jory was also there, where the counties were sitting there talking about how they're doing and what they're doing with their housing trust fund and how they're actually partnering not only just with these cities, but how they're partnering with private companies to help entice to bring in that workforce housing. So, and also, I'm also a father of 6 children. 3 of them have housing. 2 of them have some real challenges with their housing. And I have 1 son who doesn't have any housing. He is living on the street. So this is really personal and really important to me. So I do not want to see the county, who has taken a real lead in this area, back up and go down to zero. So my motion is to increase the HRA by $200,000, and that $200,000 we put into the trust fund.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr. Schomer, would you come up and speak to the rehab portion of the HRA?
Thank you, Chair Barrows, members of the commissioners of the board. As Mr. Barrows mentioned, I'm the housing rehab coordinator for the HRA. We also work with the Crow Wing County HRA to administer some of those rehab programs. The Housing Trust Fund is one tool we have in our toolbox for housing rehab. Everything that we do for housing rehab is income-based. So people who are in the lower end of the income spectrum will qualify for certain housing rehab programs. Then we have another option. So the lowest end was our Minnesota Housing Finance Agency program. Those are state dollars. All of the housing rehab we do is taxpayer money. To be good stewards of that, we make sure that we're following those guidelines, that the rehab we do cannot be cosmetic. It has to actually be health and safety driven. There has to be a reason for it. It's rehab, it's not remodeling, so we can't add a kitchen, we can't add on, we can't put in solid surface countertops. Essentially, we can put back what that person has, or if there's mobility issues, we can help with those. Minnesota Housing Finance Agency offers $37,500 for that. To qualify for that, a single-person household can make about $27,000 per year. That pretty much takes us to people that are on Social Security. The other tool we have in our toolbox is our Small Cities program. These are Community Development Block Grant dollars, CDBG funds, that trickle down from the non-entitlement communities. An entitlement community is a county with a population over 200,000 people, or a city with a population over 50,000 people. They automatically get funding. The rest of the counties and cities have to apply for that funding that's left over from the CDBG funds that are allocated. There you can make up to approximately $56,000, but that is an extremely, extremely targeted area. Those funds have to be applied for. We currently have a small cities grant going on in the city of Brainerd, but it's a small portion of the city. It's not even the city as a whole. It's definitely much more, I would equate it to kind of to when Mr. Pence is using the pointer to point there. It's so small and targeted that it's not available for many people. The MHFA funds that we're allowed to distribute, we can do throughout our county and actually in other counties. The Housing Trust Fund gives us one tool for the people that don't qualify for those other programs. Some of the rehabs we currently have going on, we have a 8-unit apartment building in Oaklawn Township that's applied for funding. We're looking at developing a scope of work, as it was mentioned earlier, that does allow us to keep those rents on at least 51% of those units. Those tenants have to qualify based off their income, and then that landlord has to agree not to raise those rents over the term of that loan. They do have to certify every year that their tenants do in fact meet that. So it's not that they could take these funds and use them to improve the property, raise their rents, and then somebody who's income limited doesn't have a home anymore. So that is just kind of a brief synopsis of how we use the Housing Trust Fund for housing rehab in that tool. And again, it is kind of our last resort. We try to help other means that we have, but we also have a Housing Trust Fund rehab application where it's a single gal. She is working 2 jobs. She needs 23 windows replaced in her home. There is lead in her home. This is in Crosby. So the scope of work we're doing is to replace it with actually 13 windows, combine some of them. She does have some rodents who are chewing through her soffits and fascia, so we'll get those patched up, and because of the lead, we'll end up putting, pre-finished steel over that. So those are some of the types of rehabs that we're seeing, that the people that have need, sometimes that's the only option we have for them. It is kind of our last resort. And again, all the funds that we do lend out are taxpayer funds. We want to be good stewards of what you guys entrust us with. We do make sure that we adhere to those program guidelines, that they're health and safety driven, or extending the life of the homes. We don't do a lot of We're never going to be on HGTV. We do roofs, we do windows, we do a lot of siding, soffit and fascia. It's not very sexy or exciting, but feel it's much needed for those that do come to us. Is there any
So
other questions?
sometimes you don't even put a shower in for people or a bathroom, is correct? I mean, there isn't enough money to do.
We did have it was a housing trust fund loan. There was a gal in Crosby who had applied and her tub was actually broke, but her floor joists were sagging and she had some lead issues, and so we have to address those lead issues and take away that kind of concern. And then the sagging floor joists were a higher priority, and we ran out of funding, so we didn't end up replacing that shower, no.
And isn't it true, too, that when we rehab, we're not adding to the housing stock in our county? We're refurbishing what we currently have, but we're not really adding to it.
It maintains what we have.
Correct.
So we don't add a unit, but we don't lose one. So I did receive a call actually from a contractor one time and asked if we could help a gal. She reached out to him to take payments to re-roof her house because she had water dripping through her living room ceiling. And he just said, I can't take payments. And as a business owner, I can totally understand that. You just can't afford to do that. I was just in a home up in the Pequot Lakes area. There was staining on the ceiling there. The gal just reached out for a roof. She does have, gaps I can see out the bottom of her door. She has some other needs, but her concern was just the roof. So we don't add, but we don't lose. So we maintain, I guess.
So I have a housing study here that was done in 2020 that's free. Any of us can read that if you want, that identified that Crow Wing County in the next 15 years, so you got to move back a ways, so maybe the next 12, 13 years, we need 4,800 additional housing units for our area. So I think that, and thank you, John, for being here, but I'd like to bring up Tyler for a second to talk about workforce housing and the need from the business community, because the business community has identified that many of their workers don't even live within 10 minutes of their work site. Some don't have transportation. Public transportation, as we all know, is an issue in the Brainerd-Baxter area, but even more so out in the greater county area. So, Tyler, tell us what you hear from the business community and from recruitment, where you're trying to bring in people that are qualified to do some of the jobs that are out there. So you think of some of the manufacturing businesses and that.
Yeah,
So
thank
what
you,
are you
Commissioner.
hearing?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Barrow, and good morning, Commissioners. First and foremost, as we watch and go through this process, if I could stand up and give a standing ovation to Nancy and her team. This is incredible. You guys do the amount of hours that you put into this budget process it's a great job. I've had the privilege of working with Nancy for a number of years, and the work that they continue to do and she continues to do is incredible. So thank you for that. And all of us, we'd love to see John on HGTV, wouldn't we? I mean, yeah, we would, John. But to address your question and to talk about the Housing Trust Fund as well from my lens, our job here is to continue to bring in new businesses and bring in new employees into Crow Wing County. Commissioner Lubke talks about this on a pretty regular basis. We're one of the fastest growing counties outside of the 7-county metro in the other 80 counties. We are growing. All of these people can't live on the lake, and they don't live on our lakes. And as much as they would like to, that's really not an option just because of the price point. As our businesses continue to grow and as we continue to draw businesses in, we look at a new Amazon distribution center. We look at Quick Trip coming in. Quick Trips will create 25 full-time jobs in one location. They want to bring in 5 more locations. Where are those people going to live? It's very, very challenging because if we look at our apartment complexes today, market rate for a 2-bedroom apartment is about $1,800. $1,800 is a pretty significant impact on a person that's making, even if you're making $45,000, $50,000, that the numbers don't add up. We need more affordable housing here. Our businesses, as Klaus Stamping expanded last year, added 110,000 square feet to their facility. they received some state funding, and that state funding hinged on creating 65 new jobs. Those 65 new jobs had to be created over a 7-year period. And as we look at that, those are jobs that are people coming in making anywhere from $19 to $22 to $23 an hour. Affordability doesn't work there. We need this type of tool in our toolbox to continue to build that out. And as we talk about the lofts of Novotny, and that becomes a pretty big hot button, and I understand that, but that was also a $15 million project, right? Well, as we've talked about, 60% of those rents in that building are controlled. Commissioner Lubke addressed that, 60%. So at 60% of those units are under rent control, you have studio apartments in there that are renting for $1,000 a month right now. And the people that are occupying that property, as we talk about that, it's been talked about over the years, the people that are occupying that property range anywhere from, they've got 75-year-old folks that are on Social Security living there and are able to live there and afford that because of the rent controls that are in place because of the money that they access through the Housing Trust Fund. Was it a lot of money? Absolutely. Should there be some things that we probably talk about long-term as to how that money comes back and maybe comes back quicker? Sure, absolutely we should. I think it's probably a sticking point. But for us to continue to grow in this area and the jobs that are continuing to come to our communities, as we need these tools and we need this access to additional funding. And I appreciate the motion to add not to bring it to zero, to add the $200,000, I think is incredibly important. This project that we're looking at here downtown that was on the old Thrifty White property, I don't know that project will get done without the assistance of the Housing Trust Fund. They were looking at everything from low-income tax credits to state income tax, not state income, but state tax dollars that are coming into this project. They had 11 different funding sources that we're going to put into that project alone, and the Housing Trust Fund was one of them. And this is a big company, but they understand that they need these types of incentives to bring these in. I mean, all of our communities are looking at incentives. Pequot Lakes has when they were looking at bringing in housing and affordable housing on available lots in that community, their city went ahead and said, we're going to waive the SAC and WAC fees. We're going to waive permitting fees to make it a more affordable piece of property for someone to build on. So those are the types of tools. Brainerd offers that. We have other incentives in place, but the utilization of the Housing Trust Fund for the work that we do continues to be an extremely important tool. And I had a developer 2 weeks ago call and say, what incentives are in place? We want to build in greater Minnesota. We want to build in one of the counties that's growing as quickly as yours is, because we understand that people need housing there. And when I talk through these things, we talk about the incentives that are in place, and we talk about the Housing Trust Fund. I can't tell you the number of people that have requested to see the housing study, and that was commissioned by the HRA and by the people that you all appoint to the HRA. They commissioned that, and it's an important tool for us because we can now address with developers, this is what we're looking for. We need this type of housing. We need affordable housing. So from my lens, this is an extremely important tool that we have. And as Commissioner Lubke addressed, that the counties that have done this to this point, Crow Wing County, Goodhue County, which is north of Rochester, those folks are working in Red Wing, they're working in Rochester, they're working in the Twin Cities if that's available. Lake County, Otter Tail County, these are smaller counties that are addressing this problem locally. And we're one of the leaders in this, which was extremely important for us to continue to address the growth that we have here.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So when I look at workforce development, and I think about Crow Wing County and what are we doing to address this housing issue for the workforce? And I think, do we want to go backwards from the efforts we've made through the CARES Act, the ARPA dollars, where we've invested in our local businesses to retain the current group of employees we have, but to also go out and find additional employees that will come in that are qualified to do these jobs in our area. So I think that it's important that we understand that this is one piece of the pie, if I might use that, to bring housing to a more affordable situation. The median house in Crow Wing County now sells for $330,000. If you listen to what it costs or what you'd have to make as a salary to afford that house, $98,000. And anybody in the room here make $98,000? It's pretty tough. So that's the reality of what's happening in our county. And I know for developers, the cost of land, the cost of supplies to build these things is going up. There's a gap. There's an affordable gap when it comes to once they put the building up and nobody can afford it, what are they going to do? So we have to look at how are we a partner in the process of addressing the housing issue in Crow Wing County. And I think Crow Wing County, we want to be the leader. We want to be able to attract workers in our county. We go out there and we beg for people in the sheriff's department. What do we have to house them if they come here? We had one gentleman, he did find housing, came from New York to be a sheriff's deputy. These are the kind of people that we're trying to find out there that will come and fill the positions that we need filled in Crow Wing County. This isn't Section 8 housing we're talking about, folks. This is everyday people, just like you folks sitting out there. Let's be realistic that when it comes to the gap, we have to be a partner in this if we want our county to flourish. If we want to go backwards and not be the leader, not be proud of who our county is, we can go to zero. We can do that all day long. It won't get us the results that I think we should get and that you folks deserve out there. So with that, is there any other remarks?
Well,
Mr.
just a
Corey?
question, Mr. Chairman. You called up a couple of the people out of the audience. I'm just wondering, it seems like some taxpayers have taken time out of their day to come up here, and I'm just wondering if you're going to hear from them,
If they would like to come up, I would,
either for or against.
for or against. Mr. Kern?
Yeah, I didn't realize this was on the agenda. I thought it was already done. So as a landowner and a landlord, we keep our property, we just rented an apartment for $550. And we keep our things low, and we count on you guys keep our taxes down. We have a son who's looking at building. And you're right, the cost of everything has gone skyrocketed.
Yep.
But what the government giveth, the government can taketh away. And when I look at when the projects were built over here on 28th Street, and the county was on this, the city of Brainerd was on the hook to finish the project. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but you had all these rentals that were low. They were low. The rents were low in Northeast and Southeast. When everything funneled over, there was like a vacuum. It created a vacuum in Northeast and Southeast. And, because you're competing with these prices that he was talking about, it's like, I don't know how a kid can even start out. But to take away private enterprise, the private sector where I don't really have the answer for it, but I know that keeping my taxes low makes my tenants happy because I don't have to raise their rent. And I do everything I can to not raise their rent as a landlord. These people really, really appreciate having decent rent. $1,000 is not decent, for a two-bedroom. That's just not,
True.
That's just not acceptable. But I don't know how you fix that. But adding more money to the HRA and doing things like that, I don't see how that's going to fix it either. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a dead elephant. I don't know how you do that, but private enterprise is where it needs to happen, and I don't know how we connect with that. So,
I think the challenge, Mr. Kern, is that the private developers are stuck with those higher land prices, higher supplies. It is a challenge. I readily admit that this is a problem that has a tough
It's big.
solution to it. And then affordability, we're talking about several different income levels in there, so it's not an easy subject to try to figure out.
Right.
But to stick our head in the sand is not a solution either. So
Yeah,
that-
doing
I'll just say
nothing.
that.
Yeah, there has to be a way to think outside the box. There has to be a way.
And I do appreciate, you know, how you run your properties and you keep the rents low, and there's certainly a segment of our population that utilizes that, and I hope you're successful at that.
We don't have a big turnover because the rent is low and we work, yeah, I mean, I do everything I can on the building myself to keep the rents low. My son's looking at building a house. And when he looked at a couple houses down the street from us. One was 190,000. It's a modular, a manufactured. I take that back. It's a manufactured, and it's from 1981. And then I look on the other side of the street, just down the road, and they wanted 320,000 for it. It sold for 160 a year and a half ago. And the housing market is crazy. It's crazy right now. And to find a home for a young person, I'm not quite sure how you do that with the dollar amount that they're making. But to subsidize everything is not good either. You can't be subsidizing everything because that's going to change the market too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
I addressed this a couple years ago. When do we tell government to get in the housing market? I get what you're talking about, Mr. Barros. I totally disagree with it. That's not where our money should go. Doug was talking about the Oaks project. I remember that mess. Now, HRA has done a good job in that. And the Oak project is right down on Oak Street, just across from the gas station there. They've done a great job. I worked for the city when that thing started. Okay, that was a mess. The city got in there and they thought they were going to have this good thing, and it cost the city a ton of money. And HRA turned around, took it back, and now they got some housing in there. There's no question about that. But who are we as a government to say we have to build housing for people? At the HR, as I stated in my opening remarks, and as Mr. Glenn, I think his name is, addressed it, that's a mess. And they did a poor job. I've looked at the HRA. I don't think they do a good job. Now, in some things they do, but where do we get off saying county boards, city boards are supposed to address housing? Are we going to go back to LBJ in '64 when he started building all these complexes? No, that's not you guys' job. You guys' job is to plow the roads, take care of the police department, or the sheriff's department, obviously, and supply things. It's not your job to supply housing. I rest my case.
I think the one thing that I would throw in there is that, first of all, some areas of our county have criminalized homelessness. There's the potential to increase homelessness if we don't be a partner in trying to solve the problem. Doesn't mean we throw money at it, but it does mean how do we solve the problem? And
How
so
do
it's
we
being,
solve
one
problems
second,
with
one second.
Okay.
It's been acknowledged that some areas of our county don't want homelessness in their jurisdiction. So how do we address that issue? I mean, there's outcroppings. I think of community services, they're going to have to deal with this, so you can either pay it up front or you can pay it on the backside. It's a dilemma, seriously.
I don't disagree. It is a dilemma. But it's not you guys' job to fix that particular dilemma.
So if the people are homeless and they're in your neighborhood, in South Long Lake there, how would you propose to address the
I
homeless
would call the sheriff and tell him to move them out.
issue? And where would they move them to?
Well,
Down the road to another township, and then that township's going to be calling, or we stick them in our county jail and you pay the price for that.
It's,
if they come into the jurisdiction of an area that has criminalized it. But we're talking about workforce housing here, and I don't want to have that lost in the conversation, because we're not talking about necessarily, there are working poor people out there that are
oh,
homeless.
no question about it, Steve. There's we aren't totally going to solve that problem.
Right.
But as far as the Housing Trust Fund, have you looked at it and studied it? Okay. Do you remember my statement was, the Housing Trust Fund, when they gave that million to Lots Novotny, you know what they were doing? They were going to increase it, just like I said. Why? Why did they give that money for no interest? Can you guys give me, I'll take $1 million. Would you give me well, you're on BLADAC.
Mr.
Would the
Rosen.
Housing Trust Fund give me $1 million?
I don't want to get into
Well,
an
see,
argument,
that's the
but I will
deal,
say
Steve.
this entire board addressed that issue with the HRA and expressed our concern about that and disappointment about that. So I
Right.
think the board as a whole
Okay, good.
addressed that with them,
That's
and
good.
they've taken some action to
Okay.
take a look at how they.
That's fantastic. Now you have to take a look at why you guys think it's okay, and I think there's just two of you that think it's okay that you need to go build housing for people. That's not your job. Sorry.
Well, we aren't building housing, but, and I will say this, that
I meant, Steve.
when it's a 400,000, or with a $400,000 house, which there are many of in our county, it's $6 a year. For for a $300,000 house, 300.
It's not about.
Fine. 300,000, this is for the public here. $300,000 house, $400,000 going in there, and we're talking $200,000, it's $6 a year. Extrapolate that, it becomes $3 a year for $200,000. I just make that point, and with that, I'll end discussion.
Nobody else?
Is there anybody else? Yes, ma'am. And I think I have one more.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jessica Tabbitt. I'm a resident of Baxter. Since we're just giving opinions today, I just wanted to say that I recognize that your job and the HRA's job of making these decisions is difficult, as we've alluded to, that there's not an easy decision. There's not a very clear way forward. So it is my opinion that you and the HRA take these decisions very seriously and weigh the negatives and the positives. In the real world, there is not perfect. I believe that the HRA has the conclusion that they have come to is that the positives outweigh the negatives for what this does for the community. Unfortunately, if we want the good workers, we want the teachers, we want the cops, we need the affordable housing. We feel like we shouldn't have to provide that for people, but unfortunately, it seems that we do, because how else is this happening in the community? Where else is this going to come from? So I can see where steps are taken to help make some of this happen for the everyday worker in our community. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think there's one more. Name, and I know you live in Baxter, so.
Yes, Sherry
welcome.
Solstad from Baxter. And this is not my calling to public speaking. Couple of thoughts. First of all, the lower the taxes, the more affordable the rent could be. We know that. But we also talked about thinking out of the box. And this is so far out of the box that nothing will happen with this idea at this moment, but I just want to throw it out there. As an occupational therapist, I did home care. And I would go into homes where there would be one person, elderly, and they had a very good-sized home that was their home and they weren't going to leave it. There's a lot of emotion with that, all of that. But I thought about, actually, when I traveled in Germany, and these two go together. there would be a bed and breakfast kind of place that you could go and stay instead of a hotel, run by a widow, a war widow typically, and they would use their home for industry of sorts. And I'm proposing that these two could meld together if our county would offer resources to things like churches that could help people fill the gap. For example, if you had an elderly person who wants to stay in their home and they would like to rent it out, rent a few rooms out to people, but they're not going to want to do that because they don't know the logistics of how to make that happen. They don't know how to filter out safe people versus people who would be unsafe. Maybe there are tools that the county could offer to facilitate some of that. Because I truly think there are a lot of places where people could live that are available, but the people who own the homes would not be comfortable renting out a room, etc., without more knowledge and more skills. So perhaps there's a way to facilitate that. The other thought is that if we're looking at housing for people who are quick trip employees, perhaps we're not looking at bringing the right kind of industry that can help people afford the housing that they need. I don't know if we need more quick trips. I think that's actually something to think about. But look at the industry that we're calling here so that we can help facilitate a better wage for people.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I'd just like to read the statute, or part of the statute. Minnesota State Statute 462A 201, Housing Trust Fund Account, Subdivision 2B. The Housing Trust Fund account must be made used for the benefit of persons and families whose income at the time of initial occupancy does not exceed 60% of the median income as determined by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Now, when Mr. Charpentier was here, he said that the median income in Crow Wing County was $57,000, which means that we're going to be helping people under $34,000. I don't believe that any of the stuff that's been talked about today talks about people who are under $34,000. That's not very much money.
Terrible.
And even if,
But 34,000, Commissioner, to your point, that's what, about $16, $15.50 an hour? And that's assuming that it's a full-time job. And there's many jobs out there that...
Yes, but on that kind of an income, you can't afford a $350,000 or $400,000 home.
My point.
And
Exactly.
so I don't believe that we're talking about what the statute actually says we can do.
To Commissioner Franzine's point,
Commissioner Lee?
I had a conversation with a young gal at the gas station not too long ago, and her husband have 2 kids, and they actually looked at getting into Lauson Novotny, and they both are in the workforce, both working full-time, and he has a part-time job, and they couldn't afford to get into Lauson Novotny. Not to pick on Lauson Novotny, but that's where she brought it up and mentioned it, and to your point, Commissioner Franzine, that's exactly the issue, is we're not meeting those needs, so why would we continue to fund it?
Well, I would have to reply to that, Commissioner Lee, and say that for a number of those units, we are meeting that need. If there's no vacancy at those lower rental rates, then yes, they're looking at market rates, which that's a whole different number that individuals have to look at.
Are we going to put a family of 4 in a studio apartment?
Say that again?
Mr. Glenn spoke of a studio apartment for $1,000 a month. Are we going to put a family of 4 in a studio apartment?
I would prefer not to, but...
Pretty sure they'd prefer not to as well.
But the point is, from my perspective, this is just my perspective, Commissioner, is that if we do nothing, we don't address the issue either. That family's going out on the street. If we do something, we may address that issue. We will address some issue. Doing nothing gets us nothing. I mean, that's a simple math problem for me. Go ahead. You had something else?
I just add one thing. To me, that's throwing money at the wall and hoping that something sticks, and that doesn't work for me. That's taxpayer money.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Corning.
So I got a story for you. Down in my neck of the woods there, it used to be St. Matthias, now it's Long Lake. The ladies down there, there's a book club. So about once a month, the ladies go and do their book club thing, and then the husbands go out for hamburgers, not to Green Lantern, sorry about that, Mark, not you, but Mark Gangs did. We went down to Lastrop because it was $5 a burger, and so I'm sitting at a table of about 8 guys that are these are all retired guys. And actually Stephanie Shook's dad was there, Bill, and Bill says, "What's going on at the county?" So I explained to him we were in the budget process, and I actually thought, you know what, this is going to be a good time for me to talk about this housing trust fund. And I explained it to him of what this is and the money and how it goes out and supposedly comes back in. And every one of them said to me, "I paid my mortgage for 30 years, and now I have my mortgage paid, and I'm on a fixed income, Social Security." And you say, "Well, it's only $6. Well, I hear that when the school wants to pass a referendum, they say, "Well, it's only $20. But you know what? It all adds up. And for these seniors that are on a fixed income, it's hard to explain to them how we're taking money away from them. They don't understand how this helps them pay their bills and keep in their home and stay in their home." And I just said, well, I'll be voting not to fund this because it just doesn't make sense to at least a majority of my constituents. So I'm ready to vote if you want to.
Any other comments?
The
Commissioner
motion on the
Franzine?
table right now is to add the 200,000.
Correct. Understand the motion?
Yep.
So all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, same sign.
No.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, although I'd like to see the levy lower than 6.49%, I would make the motion to approve the 2026 preliminary levy resolution for Crow Wing County and unorganized territory as in the packet.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Franzine, second by Commissioner Coring. Discussion. I would just say at this point that when it comes to our business community, so our Chamber of Commerce, and those individuals out there in Bladek, who's out there trying to find professionals that'll come here and work, that we're sending a loud message that we don't care about the housing dilemma that we have in Crow Wing County.
You know, Steve, that's your
Commissioner
opinion.
Franzine?
And in order to follow statute 462, it's not the working people that we want to come here that we should. This is for low income, 60% of the median income. If you're coming here to work, you're not making 60% of the median income. So you're not, I don't believe you're interpreting the statute the way it was intended to be used.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee?
You know, to make a statement like that is to turn a blind eye to everything else that we are doing to try to help our economic growth in this county, and I disagree with that statement.
Any other comments?
I will say that I believe that the Housing Trust Fund, how it's used and how it's supposed to be used, is a tool in the toolbox to either keep people in housing or to help to get housing here. And that's where I'll leave it at. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Not in favor, same sign. Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Franzine.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Coring. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, same sign. That motion passes. We are adjourned.